Should I start? Good evening. My name is Gail Fisher, and I am a book fair committee member. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 69th Annual Detroit Jewish Book Fair to hear this evening's speaker, Joel Stein, author of In Defense of Elitism, Why I'm Better Than You and You Are Better Than Someone Who Didn't Buy This Book. The goal of the Detroit Jewish Book Fair is to bring the best new Jewish books and authors from around the world to Metro Detroit. This mission continues today, even in these unprecedented times. The Jewish Book Fair runs through December 9th with many exceptional speakers forthcoming. So please visit our website at culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair, where you could see our entire schedule of events, learn about ways to support the book fair, watch events you might have missed, and peruse our online store. This year, in order to provide our extensive lineup to the community, we have made all our events free of charge. This could only occur through the generosity of patrons and sponsors. So if you enjoyed this speaker and others, please consider donating. We rely on community support to make this annual event possible. So we thank you in advance for becoming part of our family. Long-standing Time magazine readers will recognize the author of this book, Joel Stein, the laugh out loud commentator of American life. In Defense of Elitism will not disappoint. Joel Stein skewers everyone, including his elitist self, as he explores our political culture war. Joel spends a week in Roberts County, Texas, which had the highest percentage of Trump voters in the country, to find out the reason for the rise in populism. With self-deprecating wit, but never condescending, Joel will surely put a smile on your face while enlightening you to different views. Joel Stein is a Theyre Prize finalist, journalist, author, and cultural pundit. He was a staff writer and columnist at Time magazine for 20 years and a writer for Entertainment Weekly and the Los Angeles Times. He is the author of Man-Made, A Stupid Quest for Masculinity, and he also writes for the upcoming TV show American Princess. Joel received his BA and MA in English Literature from Stanford University and taught humor writing at Princeton University. Joel Stein will be in conversation with Allen Maniker, who will moderate the discussion. Allen Maniker is a retired neurosurgeon and former professional dancer. Originally from Detroit, Allen has spent much of his career in New York City. Allen is the host of the JCC Cultural Arts Department online conversation series. We want you to be part of this exciting event, and our presenters will answer your questions throughout the discussion. So please put your comments and questions in the YouTube comment section below, or you could text them to the number in the corner of your screen. Please join me in virtually welcoming Joel Stein and Allen Maniker.
Hey.
Hey, thank you for doing this. As you know, I will only allow brain surgeons to interview me.
Well, you know, Joel, that's really kind of elitist of you.
Yes.
And in fact, I wanted to tell you that, you know, I saw a podcast done by a couple of friends of yours, which they called it Grand Rounds, which is in itself pretty elitist. And they decided that they were going to call you the elite Mr. Stein. So can I call you the elite Mr. Stein?
I love this role reversal because in real life, I lived in the building where you were on the board and you guided me. I was all of like 28 and I bought an apartment and you guided me through this day of managing how to live in a building. So I appreciate that. And I feel guilty for you calling me the elitist Mr. Stein, but I'm not going to stop you.
Oh, good. Guilty. Well, you know, so that already pegs you right there. You know, but it's wonderful that I get to interview you as well, because I get to say, you know, I knew him when, right?
Well,
I knew you when you were just simply Joel Stein, not the elite Mr. Joel Stein.
Yeah, although I've been trying to be the elite Mr. Joel Stein, as I chronicle in the book, kind of my whole life. Like that was kind of my goal of of trying to get into a good college and trying to work for a magazine and just trying to get into what I called the loop in the book, which you've probably been in several loops because you were a professional dancer, which allows you into all kinds of work. And then you ran I don't know even the title, but you were a brain surgeon. So that let you into all kinds of worlds too, right? Elite world.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so you talk about in the book, being in a loop. There's loops within loops. Doesn't it get tiring chasing those loops?
Well, that's what C.S. Lewis said, and I quote him in the book. And he really warned. He gave a speech at Oxford of all places, warning the Oxford students not to pursue a life of just trying to get into further and further loops and feel more important and seem more important. And that was a path to misery, he said. But I've kind of found it the opposite. Like most of the interesting experiences in my life and most of the growth I've kind of experienced about learning how big the world is have been from trying to be in these loops. So no, I think it's been a general positive. It's probably made me a jerk, but a much happier jerk.
You're a happy jerk. Okay, but we jump ahead because I want to read out the title again. So, In Defense of Elitism, Why I'm Better Than You, and You're Better Than Someone Who Didn't Buy This Book. So what's it about? And why is this title so long?
Two different questions. The other one is, why is this title so long? So it's hard when you're trying to write a book that's funny, but about a serious thing that you mean. Because everyone somehow in their brain, as soon as you're funny, still thinks it's parody. And that's even after watching The Daily Show and, John Oliver. Dave Barry wrote a column that was just funny, and I loved him as a kid. And then I remember interviewing him, and I was like, do you try and make a point? And he said, never. And I realized I'm not funny enough to just do that. I wanted to write a column that made a point and had jokes along the way. So I wrote a book that's completely earnest about what I'm trying to say, but has jokes along the way. And it was hard to get that across. So if I just went with In Defense of Elitism, it seems like a very serious book. So I wanted to throw a joke in there, but I wanted to throw in a joke that didn't imply it was a parody. It kind of failed. But what the book's about is, I think the first thing I want to do is define what I mean by the elite and elitism. I do not mean the 1% in the Occupy Wall Street, Bernie Sanders, millionaires and billionaires way. What I mean, people that Sarah Palin accuses of being the elite. The people that run, I'm going to mess up the quote, but Rush Limbaugh accuses them of the people who run the media, the government, academics. There's a fourth one that I'm blanking on. But yes, it's the people who live in cities and kind of control a lot of the institutions and the deep state that the populace hate.
But I mean, so that's so interesting to me because the Republicans branded the Democrats as elitist. But then I saw a Democratic ad with a picture of the Trump family that said, get rid of these elites. So I thought this was such an interesting contradiction that each side hurling the same insult, elite, at each other. Are we in danger of kind of losing the definition of the word?
I don't think so. I think that we're finally embracing what's going on. There was a moment after Trump had become president, but he was still doing rallies that he was in. I think he was in Minnesota. He was in Minneapolis. And after railing against the elite for the whole campaign, and it was during the midterms. So there were other candidates in the Republican Party running. There were two candidates running with the slogan, defeat the elite. But suddenly in Minneapolis, Trump says, out of nowhere, he said, why are they the elite? Like, we're the elite. We have bigger houses and we have nicer boats. Like, we should be the elite. And then he started calling himself the super elite, and he and his followers. And then he got super excited about these boat events recently, which was weird because in the book, I defined that there's two elites that are in battle with each other. And I define them as the intellectual elite and the boat elite. And the first time the word elite is used the way we're kind of using it, was by this economist, this fascist economist, Vilfredo Pareto, at the turn of the century. I think in 1900 or 1901, he wrote an essay called The Circulation of the Elites. And his argument is, at any given time, there's two different kinds of elites. There's one that care about loyalty and money and that kind of success. And then there's another kind that's more into cooperation and ideas. And these two elites are in battle with each other. Nietzsche talks about the same thing. And there's usually whoever can win the side of the populace will gain control, and it'll flip from one to the other. And I think that's the battle you're seeing now between these two elites. And one intellectual elite has run the show for a long time. And then things started moving very quickly in the cities that you and I and everyone, I think, probably on this. It's not a Zoom. I don't know what it is. And I can't keep track anymore. Is it a chime? Is it I don't even know what they're called anymore. But this elite who lives in cities things started moving fast, whether it was globalization or gay rights, legalization of marijuana. Things were moving fast, and they didn't feel like it if you lived in a city. But the way the world was interconnected was moving very quickly if you didn't live in a city. And I think those people started to disengage from the intellectual cosmopolitan elite, and they were, ripe for the picking for the boat elite. And I think that's the battle we're seeing in nearly every country on earth right now, especially the developed ones.
Well, so is the pendulum swinging back? Like, did the boat elite not do such a great job?
Well, I don't know if it's swinging back. Like, I think we're in the middle of that pitched battle. So I know, I've given up on prediction. Like, the best I can do is so I freaked out when Trump won, even though, lots of Republicans win. I'm used to that. But the elite hadn't lost since Andrew Jackson, as far as the presidency is concerned. And I was just panicked. I didn't know what would happen. Legitimately didn't know what would happen if we'd, round people up, if we'd, put kids in cages, if we'd start wars. I just didn't know what this kind of nationalism and populism would bring. I knew it wasn't good historically. It's a lot of trauma. And so when I get scared, what I tend to do is go out and learn more about something, because it usually just the information makes me feel more secure.
Right.
But
so was it at that, sorry to interrupt, but was it at that point when you were feeling nervous about him winning that you felt you wanted to write on this topic? Was that the germination of this topic, or had this been brewing?
I started writing I think I wrote a column about defending the elite when shortly after McCain picked Sarah Palin. Because even though and I do in the book kind of trace this historically, obviously throughout time, even before America, this has been an issue. But Richard Hofstadter wrote some great books about anti-intellectualism in America that trace this very far back. But for me, Sarah Palin freaked me out. I couldn't believe she was going to be a heartbeat, or potentially was going to be a heartbeat away from the presidency, and was so brazen about how much more important the gut was than having any knowledge. That she just intuitively, because she was a good person, was going to be great at leading the free world without knowing anything or even reading the paper, and that just panicked me. And then that conversation, I was starting to hear more and more. I remember I was listening to Joe Biden interviewed by Matt Lauer. He was vice president at the time. And they were talking about, I guess, Elena Kagan, somebody was being nominated for the Supreme Court. And Matt Lauer said, they've all gone to either Harvard or Yale or Columbia, maybe Stanford Law School. Isn't this elite? And Joe Biden kind of was like, well, I went to Syracuse. I'm a normal guy. And to me, the idea that the Supreme Court shouldn't be, these are constitutional scholars. The idea that they shouldn't have gone to good law schools gave me the shivers that this was a conversation we were all having. So that's when I started writing about it. And then the night that Trump won, which I did not expect at all, although I was nervous enough about that, I registered as a Republican during the primaries so I could vote for Ted Cruz, because I felt like that would be better. The most hated man in the world. So I'd been thinking about this for a little while, is the answer.
So then, are you saying that Trump was the natural outcome of the movement begun by Sarah Palin?
I don't think it was begun by Sarah Palin. I mean, I think this is a battle that you're having all the time. That ebbs and flows and wanes and waxes is, I guess, better. So no, she just kind of clued me into it personally. And then I was, when Brexit happened, I thought more about it. When Trump won the primary, I thought more about it. But I still wasn't panicked about it. I went to a party right up the street from me here in LA, 4 houses down, that this liberal radio show host, Stephanie Miller, hosts for the election. And I brought like a bottle of Trump sparkling wine that he makes in Virginia, hoping to toast like his failed attempt to join the elite with this kind of crappy sparkling wine. And that night I just freaked out. And that's when I started thinking about, how do I learn more about this? And that's when I decided to just find the place with the most Trump voters in the country and go there for a week.
Right. So that was in Texas. Yeah. So pronounce the name for us.
It's spelled Miami, but it's pronounced Miami, which I assumed was a Southern accent, but it actually is the name of the tribe of Native Americans that lived down there.
But I mean, you talk a little bit about it in the book, but didn't you always feel at least a little bit on guard?
While I was down there?
Yeah.
I was freaked out before I went. Like, every Jew in my life was like, don't tell them you're Jewish, whatever you do. And everyone was like, be careful. What a weird thing to go on a trip to somewhere in your own country and all your friends are telling you to be careful. Like,
right.
It just seemed, I mean, it didn't seem insane. I was scared, like really scared. I don't have much. I grew up in suburban New Jersey. I went to Stanford for college. I can't believe 17 minutes to say that. And then I moved to Manhattan, to your building, and I've moved to LA. So I've had very little experience. I spent one summer in Paradise, California, the town that burned down a couple of summers ago. And that was my only introduction to small town life. I worked for a newspaper there for a summer. So I was very nervous and things were very heated at that moment. But no, the people were super nice to me, considering they knew I was writing about them and they'd had a bad experience when CNN came to town. So I was very surprised at how too open probably for their own good they were when they talked to me.
How long in total were you there for?
I was just there a week. A
week. And so what, the very first day you felt comfortable and were able to let your guard down?
Yeah, well, to some extent, because I have a lot of social anxiety, which has been reporting has been very, very good for me, but it's still very scary for me. So I was going down there and I had emailed or Facebook messaged with the mayor a bunch of times, but I really didn't. He was kind of flaky. I didn't know if he was going to talk to me. I didn't know who was going to talk to me. I didn't know if everyone was just going to shun me. So I was very nervous. But I found, even the mayor told me I had to stay at like the closest thing was a Holiday Inn in Pampa, which was many miles away. I actually went to Airbnb and found a place. This woman was trying to run like a B&B out of her house. So I stayed there, and the woman that was running the place for her greeted me there. And she is the nicest, most amazing woman. And I explained to her what I was doing, and she just said, "Great, I'll be here tomorrow. I'll introduce you to all my friends. I'll give you a tour of the town." And the town's 500 people. So by the end of the day, I'd met 10% of the town, easy, maybe 20%. So she really, I'm really grateful. And then I actually had to write 3 new chapters for the paperback version that comes out in April. So I've talked to her pretty recently. I talked to a bunch of people down there again. But yeah, she introduced me to everyone, and they were so welcoming. Like, I didn't pay for one meal down there. I ate in someone's house every time.
But in real life, could those people be your friends? I mean, in reality, weren't you just a voyeur?
Yeah, I'm reporting. Anytime I'm reporting, I'm a voyeur. But could they? I still talk to this guy. Jerry calls me every 6 weeks. So other than my parents and my sister, I talk to Jerry more than anyone in my life. So Jerry's kind of my friend now, I guess. Could they be friends of mine? Yeah, I found it. Yeah. So in Miami, Texas, this town of 500 people, I eventually learned there is an elite within Miami. Like they all know each other, but they don't all hang out with each other. And there's like ranching families that have been there for a long time and have multi-million-dollar ranches there. So it's not a poor town at all. It's not like hillbilly elegy. They're Republicans. They probably prefer Ted Cruz, but most of them went to college. They work in the oil and gas industry for the most part, but there are rancher families there, and they have much more money, and they've often gone to better colleges and majored in more humanities type things, and they've traveled a lot more. And in fact, I met people down there who knew people I knew in Manhattan because they'd gone to college together. People who worked at food websites and stuff like that. So yeah, I think if I lived there, there was a group of people I could hang out with. Like they were much more religious than me, and they were a different religion than me, and they were Republicans. But yeah, I think I could totally hang out down there.
Wow, you're an easygoing kind of guy.
No, I don't think that's necessarily true everywhere. No, I felt like these people weren't that different from me, which is something that made me feel much better about what's going on right now. That the people.
Wait, Joel, really? So they live in Texas, they're Republicans, and they live in a small town, and they're not much different than you? They're very different than you, aren't they?
They have
that doesn't negate the fact that you might have commonality with them and shared interests, but they're at the end of the day very different from you.
I didn't feel like they were that different. I mean, their life was slower, and they spent less time on their phones, and they knew their neighbors, and they got together in person a lot more than I do with people I know, and they went to church a lot. But no, they knew much more about my life than we know about theirs, because they watch TV and they read the news. And so our lifestyle and way of living has permeated their culture in a way that their culture hasn't permeated ours. So they were very familiar with everything that I do and what my city is like. It's just that information has come down to them. So I didn't feel foreign completely. And that's part of the connection, that like our whole life has invaded their life, and theirs has not, and theirs is disappearing. I mean, that town's disappearing. Young people leave that town, and they don't come back. That town, I talked to the guy who runs the town really isn't the mayor. It's the guy, he's a different position. He's actually a judge. And he told me that their sewage system, they don't have enough in taxes to fix their own sewage system. So at some point, I don't know what's going to happen there. But this is true you can drive around this country and see tons of small towns that are basically abandoned. So they have an existential problem, that their way of life, that they believe is better than our way of life. And they will tell that, they can make a very good argument, right? They're like, do you have you just walk homeless people on the street? Like that, you're okay with that? I'm like, well, and they're like, you don't know your neighbors and you look at your phone all the time? Like, what, that's dystopic. Like, I don't want our country to become like that. So they see that happening, and they want to stop it. And do they like Donald Trump? No. Like, they think of him as the exterminator you call, who shows his butt crack and curses, and you don't like him, but he's getting the job done.
Really?
Yeah. No, Donald Trump in Miami, Texas, couldn't be someone that would gross them out more. All his values, the way he talks, no, they don't want to hang out with him.
But yet they voted for him.
Yeah, because they need someone to stop their lifestyle. They need to stop America from becoming something that they think is horrifying, compared to, they're living emotionally, even though they have flat screen TVs and they have smartphones. I walked into someone's house, and this wasn't unusual, and there was this, I'd never seen it before, curved flat screen, this giant thing, and they were showing Gunsmoke on it. I went to the cafe there, and as someone was telling me that CNN had come and made them look backwards, like they were living in the past, and I look up and there's a small TV in the cafe, and it's showing the Andy Griffith Show. Like, they're nostalgic for a world that they believe is dangerously disappearing.
Disappearing or gone? Isn't that world sort of gone? Does the world of Andy Griffith live on other than in a TV show?
I guess if you go to northern England or you go to lots of places in our country, yeah. I mean, this town sort of looked like the Andy Griffith show. It was completely white, completely Christian. They spent a lot of time with each other's families. Like, it was a little Andy Griffithy.
Well, it looks like it, but then they still have smartphones too.
They are all divorced, and they have smartphones, and their kids, their grandkids are on opioids. No, they're suffering from modernity or enjoying modernity or both. So, but they want it. They're at least want to push it out.
Right. Well, in their ideal, really, so in their ideal world, the rest of the world would look like Miami.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, that's why you get nationalism. That's why you close the borders. That's why if you're a Swede, you don't want any Arabs coming in. You're afraid of losing this, we would call it Western values, but if you're in India, you'd call it maybe Hindu values or whatever your values are. They're afraid of it being contaminated by this progressive cosmopolitan world where they think of as selfish and without rules and communityless.
Well, are we, and we being the elite, are we making a mistake in dismissing them? Because we do dismiss them, don't we?
Yeah. Are we making it? I think we are. I think as far as winning elections, for sure, you have to win people over. You can't just dismiss people if you want to lead. So politically, that's a huge mistake. I also would argue we probably have some things to learn from them. I don't think this world where we don't know our neighbors, like I lived in that building with you. Like, I'm so thrilled to know you and David, but I didn't know many other people in that building. Like, I didn't know the people on my hall. It felt like when you go, I felt on our hall, which I also felt when I flew out of Miami, I felt the same way, which was, I felt like this town where everyone knew each other and everyone talked to each other. I got to know more of the town than I knew. I got to know almost as many people there as I know. Well, that's not true, but percentage-wise, more people in that town than this town. But I felt when I got on the airplane and you don't talk to anyone because there's just too much, and you're nervous about getting stuck and caught, and you just don't say hi. I remember I once did a column where I worked as a person on the airline. I forgot what we call them anymore. But and you say hi to everyone as they get on the plane, and people are just like, they can't even say hi to you because.
Wait, you mean a flight attendant?
A flight attendant. I'm sorry. So I worked as a flight attendant on a flight, and
it was either that or a pilot, and I wasn't sure that you would be good as a pilot.
Sorry, it was pilot. That's right. I couldn't drink. I remember now. I wasn't allowed to drink, so it was pilot. No, I worked as a flight attendant. I went to flight attendant school and I learned what to do in case of a water landing. But everyone is so shut down, and that's how it is on the plane, and that's how it was on our hallway. Like, do you know all your neighbors?
As a matter of fact, we do. During this pandemic, we've had several occasions where we open up our doors, sit 10 feet apart, and have a drink and talk.
So you were friends with them pre-pandemic?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So you're saying, you lived there for how long?
We've lived on this floor since 2001. But before that, we knew our neighbors on the 16th floor as well.
So these are people you were kind of friendly with before the pandemic?
Oh, yeah. So we knew, so there's 3 apartments on our floor. We knew all of the people in the other 2 apartments. And we were friendly with them before the pandemic, and we've been friendly with them, obviously, through the pandemic. But when we lived on 16, there were 10 or 12 apartments on the floor, and we knew everybody on the floor there as well. So
what was going on with my
house? Maybe it's you.
I hadn't thought of that.
I'm sorry to break it to you. I mean, this wasn't supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. But
was this whole thing designed by the Detroit JCC to be an intervention to get me to start being a nicer person?
Yes, absolutely. Well, no, a more friendly, talkative person. But I will tell you that my husband talks to everyone on an airplane. He will come from a flight and know absolutely everything about the person sitting next to him. And he'll say, God, that guy was so boring. I go, well, why did you talk to him? He goes, cool, because he was sitting next to me.
I have that too. Yeah. Not in my hall, apparently. Do you know we still have this? Do you know the stool you bought us when my son was born?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
You want to tell that story?
Well, it's not much of a story. It was an awesome gift. It was we've bought that gift, although not the word you put on there for other people. But I was trying to figure out. My wife and I were trying to figure out what to name our son. So I wrote a column about it in Time, and I asked people to vote. And one of the things was I didn't want to pick a name that someone could, rhyme with and mock him with. So there was a whole list of names that we threw out just because we were afraid kids would make fun of them and rhyme something to it. One of the names that we didn't go with for that reason was Smesticles. And David found that funny enough that he sent me a stool, a beautiful wood carved stool for a child with blocks that you could take out that spell out Smesticles. So eventually I got to explain that to my son, and he was very pleased.
But then he got the real bench that spelled out his name, Laszlo.
Did you buy us both benches?
Yeah.
Oh my God, we have both benches. That's amazing. I thought we got the other one. Oh, because you felt like the joke one's so much more memorable, but you felt bad about the joke one, so you sent a real one?
No, we didn't feel bad about it. We just sent both. But what you have to know, what you might not know, is that Danforth Toys that makes that bench is run by a very religious Christian group. And David had to get special permission to put the word Schmesticles. He goes, you might think it's a dirty word, but it's really not. So there's a backstory to that.
So they objected to Smesticles at first?
No, they weren't sure what it meant. So the woman taking the order, had to talk to her manager to make sure that it was okay to put that word on the bench.
I think they made the wrong call.
So how old is Laszlo now?
We actually did name him Smesticles.
Yeah, how old is Smesticles?
He is 11.
Wow.
And no one, Smesticles is fine. Not once has anyone made fun of it.
Right. Now, are you bringing him up to be an elite, or is the fact that you're his father make him elite? I mean, can you be genetically elite?
Can you be? I do think I was born a little genetically elite.
Really?
Yeah, compared to my sister or my parents, I think. And in fact, so was my wife. In fact, there's tension between my wife and her brothers and her parents because they find her to be. She's from a very small town in upstate New York, and from a young age, she was like obsessed with fashion magazines and New York City and getting out of that town. And she found a way to get boarding school to let her go for free, basically. She got a scholarship. And here he is now. You're going to be on a Zoom call. All right, Smesticles does not want to be on the call.
No? Tell him it's the guy that bought him the bench.
The guy who got you the Smesticles bench.
What?
It's the guy who bought you the Smesticles bench.
What?
Hey, Laszlo.
Hi.
Wow. Look at you. All right. Nice to see you. Do you ever play with that bench? You're too old for it now, but you probably did when you were 3 or 4.
There's one that said Laszlo. The blocks.
I remember.
The Laszlo one?
Yeah.
That was the one we kept out more.
There you go. Very cool. All right. So let's go back to being elite.
Mm-hmm.
Can I be elite because I like White Castle hamburgers?
Okay, so first of all, look at just that monolith door behind you. Like you're in New York City, you're a brain surgeon, you're not running HUD, therefore you're an elite.
Okay.
So White Castle, I love a Castle burger, but I mean that's because I'm from New Jersey, and that's what you do at 2 a.m. when you're drunk. But what would you eat it? So for me, it's Proustian. Like I'll buy those from the freezer department at the supermarket, and it reminds me of my youth. But is that the same for you, or why do you have a connection to White Castle?
Well, so it was interesting because, before I worked at Beth Israel in Manhattan, I worked in New Jersey. And when I would be coming home on call at some ridiculous hour, like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, there was a White Castle in Jersey City. And so I would pop in, and that would be my dinner at 2 o'clock in the morning from White Castle.
How many castles do you need for a dinner? 4? 4? That's not bad. That's like one burger.
Why? How many do you eat?
Well, I've never done it for a dinner. I've only done it to like stop up alcohol.
Okay.
As a teenager or later. Or is it, yeah, 4 sounds right.
But so what was your impression when, if you knew that FDR, President Roosevelt, when Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited the United States for the first time, he served them hot dogs.
Well,
and the American elite they loved them. They had seconds. It was a big deal in the newspapers that they asked for another one. But the American elite was horrified that they offered the Queen of England hot dogs.
Yeah, I know LBJ brought down like the chancellor from Germany to like a barbecue and served him like franks and beans and stuff. That does seem like a very American shtick.
But is that what it is? Is it shtick?
I mean, I think it's introducing someone to your culture in some ways. That doesn't bother me.
Does it impress you? Because it kind of impresses me.
It's ballsy. I like the idea of it, of being upfront about your Americanness. But I didn't like when Donald Trump ordered a bunch of McDonald's and served it under domes to the Clemson football team. That bothered me.
Yeah. Well, add it to the list, right?
Yeah, it's a long list. I did a show for Funny or Die right before the election called Best Presidency Ever, because I've been on these shows like I Love the 80s back in the, I guess, 2000s or 90s. And so we did we went over all the horrifying things of all 4 years and made jokes about them. And it was hard to be funny.
Yeah. But so again, going back to the elite, but this country was founded by elites.
Yes.
I mean, all of the signers of the Constitution were clearly elites. So how did we evolve to this point? And so is it again that central idea that you bring up, that it's people, a whole segment of the society trying to hold on to a life that they see is going away?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the American exceptionalism, why we tend to fall for this more than other countries, but it is happening everywhere. I mean, there's no country where, nowhere in Europe, nowhere. This is happening everywhere. That's kind of going through this gear change into this new level of modernity. But America there's this great book, Fantasyland, by Kurt Anderson, which I'm sure you can buy at the JCC store. We're supposed to tell people to buy books at the JCC store. So buy my book, buy Kurt Anderson's book, either one. That talks about the way America was founded and how we have always been into kind of this hucksterism and individuality that runs against the Enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. But so one of the questions in the chat was, why do you think the people in the small town in Texas feel that they are the real America and city dwellers are not?
Well, everyone feels like they're the real everything, right? But I think city dwellers, I interviewed Tucker Carlson in the book. And I know him a little bit. And he put it to me, he answered that question really well. He answered a lot of questions really well. But he told me a story pre-Trump where he's at some party full of like investment bankers, as Tucker Carlson should be. And there was like an Australian guy who said, I don't feel Australian. Like, that's just the name of the country on my passport. But I spend this many days in this country and I'm here and I have a place here. And I think I feel more connection with people. Like you said, do you feel different from people in Miami, Texas? Yes, compared to people I meet from London, compared to people I was just talking to from Stockholm. So I do think there's a globalized elite that meet at Davos or, you know, or don't, or just know each other and feel connected. And the people in Miami, Texas don't feel part of that world. They feel like they're connected to other rural Americans. So I think they do feel, and they are more patriotic. I know we don't like to say that. And it was great when Biden won and I drove around Silver Lake here in LA and people were waving flags and taking back the flag, because I was afraid to put a flag on my door for the last 4 years. I found this house had the hole on the outdoor railing, stair railing. I didn't know what it was for. And eventually I figured out it was for a flag. So I bought like a California flag because I felt weird putting up an American flag. So yeah, I think they tend to go into the military more. They tend to be, you know, the way you feel about your kids, that you love them no matter what, and you feel this protection and loyalty. I think they feel that about the country more than I do. So I think they do.
But I gotta stop there, because so are you saying that just by virtue of the fact that you go into the military makes you more patriotic?
I think yes. I think being willing to die for your country is a level I'm not at.
Well, that I don't disagree with, but I know plenty of young people that have gone into the military primarily because, not necessarily out of a great deal of patriotism, but the fact that they didn't know what to do with their lives, or their lives were so undisciplined they hoped that the military would give that to them.
For sure, and I you know, there's so many reasons for going into the military. I spent some time in my first book with people at Fort Knox. So yes, there's a ton of different reasons for going into the military, but I think on the whole, either for whatever reason you went, by the time you're out, you have a different feeling about the country.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's different. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah. But so is the word elite just another word for liberal?
Yeah. When I talk about the intellectual elite, I guess it's another word for cosmopolitan. It's another word for globalist. It's another word for educated. It's another word for liberal. It's another word for Jewish. I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this book was because everything that's leveled against the elite, that they're kind of self-serving, that they're sneaky, that they use the rules to their benefit. It's everything that people say about the Jews. And in fact, it's very hard to separate some levels of anti-elitism, especially to the conspiracy theory level, from anti-Semitism. So it feels personal to me when you look historically at what people say about the Jews and what people say about the elites. The overlap is huge.
Well, I want to read what you wrote about that. And this is a quote from the book. I feel that anti-elitism and anti-Semitism overlap a lot, and not coincidentally. There are the same accusations that they being Jews, elites, or worst of all, elitist Jews, are sneaky, self-dealing, physically weak, and use the rules to their own benefit. How horrible.
And effeminate, right? Isn't that the other thing that they always accuse us of? Both the elite and effeminate. The men are effeminate, and the women are too manly. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But why do you think this has become so prevalent in 21st century United States?
I mean, my best guess is that the divide between you and me and at least half of America has become too wide.
Well, I mean, are you saying that there's a way to reverse that?
Yeah, there's probably two ways to reverse that. One, they have to become more like us, or we have to start listening more to them.
Well, listening doesn't mean that we're becoming like them.
No, but listening's a big deal. Like, just being heard is such a, being part of the conversation, you know, from like just convincing anyone to do anything. Like, I just keep reading these horrible essays from people who are like, they keep telling me to like go make a connection with the Trump voter, and then I talk to them and they still don't believe in what I believe. I'm like, that's not the point of reaching out to people to convince them that you're right. The first step to like having any kind of connection, any bridge is just hearing someone. So I think people are going in with the wrong attitude.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but I have to tell you, it was shocking to me. So one of the residents that I trained, who's now a practicing neurosurgeon for many, many years, was a very big Trump supporter. And I thought, well, okay, you have politics that agree with that. But then when the pandemic started and a couple of months into it, he gave me a call and I said, come on, you have to concede that the president hasn't done a great job in controlling this pandemic. And he came back saying, well, I think he's done as good a job as could possibly has been done. And now we're talking about another brain surgeon. I mean, it was really kind of shocking to me. And I sort of agreed not to try and push that further. So yeah, I heard him, but I was so shocked that he could, I don't want to talk, I didn't want to talk about Trumpian politics with him. I just wanted to talk about handling the pandemic. And he felt that the pandemic was being approached properly, which really shocked me and dismayed me.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Scott Atlas, he was the Stanford neuroscientist, surgeon?
Radiologist,
sorry.
Yeah.
But so the trick, if there is a trick, is to kind of like put away the shock and approach it with curiosity. Because really, how interesting. There's a guy who lives in New York and is a neurosurgeon and believes that this is the right way to handle the pandemic. I'd like to know.
He doesn't live in New York. He lives in Florida.
Oh, well, that explains everything. You're just
dumb, right?
Yeah. You don't need to talk to him. Someone told me that if you shake the map of the United States, all the loose pieces eventually, like a pachinko game, just fall to Florida.
Yeah, right. But so what I want to go back to is that, so didn't post World War II take care of this attitude of anti-Semitism that you spoke about, or did it just kind of go underground for a while?
I don't think it went that far underground. I mean, I remember my wife's not Jewish, and he didn't really believe anti-Semitism was a problem in the US anymore. And then I started writing a column for Time, and this was back, pre-email. And I would just bring home letters from people, one of whom I remember was in Manhattan, who just would write horrifying anti-Semitic screeds to me. And I was like, they're still out there. Like they're reading Time magazine and they're writing letters. I mean, these are the craziest of the crazy. So, I mean, it's definitely, anti-Semitism is on the rise for sure in America and Europe. So World War II did not take care of this. The Inquisition did not take care of this. The pogroms did not take care of this. They said never forget for a reason, because people forget.
Yeah. Do you have a strong Jewish identity?
I have a strong Jewish cultural identity. And I'm an atheist, which makes the religious part harder. But I did not grow up like this at all, but we have a mezuzah and we've been doing Shabbat every Friday. Like pre-pandemic, we'd do it like 2 to 3 Fridays, and now we do it every Friday. But no,
you and Cassandra
and Laszlo. But I should qualify. We don't do any of the right parts. We just do the ceremony. We just do the candles and the wine, mostly the wine. And Cassandra makes, we have a challah every week that Cassandra home makes now that she's gotten very, very good at it since the pandemic. But
does she like gefilte fish?
She does. She really wants to be a Jew. That's kind of why she married me. I did this.
But do you like gefilte fish?
No.
Does she?
I've had versions of it that aren't as bad as other versions, but she legitimately likes it. She legitimately likes all things Jew to such an extent that we were at that Whole Foods in Chelsea. Yeah. And it was near I guess it was near Rosh Hashanah. I hope I don't get the holiday wrong. And she, they give samples out, She came over. She's like, "You have to taste this. It's delicious. It's charosé." And so I'm like, "That is haroset, and it's not that good."
But that's Passover. Yeah.
I knew I was screwing it up. See, I'm not a good Jew. Can we erase that part?
You're the best Jew you can be, which is pretty damn good. The fact that your wife likes gefilte fish, all is forgiven. Does she like chopped liver?
She does. She makes it. She likes it so much. I don't like it, but she also, chopped liver falls in that she's Germanic, so she falls in that kind of like, innards, and she's part. Yeah, real worst. Exactly. She likes that too. Okay. Do you like any of those foods?
I love those. I love chopped liver. I love gefilte fish. You name it. I love it. Kishkas. Yeah.
When you say you love gefilte fish, and I'm going to get the holiday wrong again, but have you had it on any day besides Passover in your entire life?
Yes.
Like you just go to a restaurant, you're like, "Do you have gefilte fish?" Not
a restaurant, but occasionally I will buy a jar of it.
That's the worst version.
But it has to be the Viennese version because it's a little bit sweeter.
Oh no, that sounds worse. I didn't know there was a worse version.
I hate to break it to you, but next time.
Borscht and shav?
Shav I don't like. Okay. Borscht I like, and I make my own borscht, and it's pretty good.
Now, to be honest, had you ever been to the Russian tea room and had the borscht there?
No. Was it good?
It's phenomenal. And the whole experience is phenomenal, even if you just do it at the bar, because that place is crazy looking.
Well, I like my own. So that's too funny. Is your family funny? Like, Are your parents funny people?
Yeah, they are, for sure. I mean, I'm not very funny. I can write funny, but I can't really, as you can tell from our conversation, like I'm not one of my funnier friends. I just learned how to tell jokes in writing.
Well, I think you're pretty funny. You're kind of droll.
Droll isn't funny.
No? What about, do you have a wry sense of humor?
These are all words that don't mean funny.
Yes, they do. To me, they do.
Wry, droll. Yeah.
So let's for in the last few minutes we have, let's talk about your writing. When you write, do you have to isolate yourself, or can Laszlo be running around playing games and you're still writing?
I'm a real procrastinator, so I tend to write best very, very late at night after there's no more email and everyone's gone to sleep. But it depends what kind of writing. If it's there's stuff I can just churn out. And the best writing I do was on planes by far. I could write more on one flight than I could an entire week at home. So yeah, anything that blocks everything out is good for me.
Wow. So when you're on a plane, are you wearing earphones so that no one's talking to you and you're just typing away?
Yeah, I tend to listen to music when I write. I can listen to the same album over and over again because I'm kind of hearing it and kind of not hearing it. So yeah, there are some albums I've listened to. Like for this book, maybe because it was a book about elitism, I listened to oddly Beethoven's First Symphony, the one that's much less romantic and much more classical, over and over again for some reason.
And did this book just kind of flow out, or was it a struggle?
Such a struggle. I wrote a totally different book at first. There's a whole long chapter on Goop. I spent a lot of time with the people at Goop. Yeah, it's taken me. People should still buy this book at the JCC bookstore. However, I feel like it's taken me 2 books to start to figure out what a book is. So I kind of want to write a third one. I think I just didn't realize a book is like a long article. I thought it was a series of articles. So yeah, this definitely didn't just come out. Although the parts about Miami, Texas just came out. The first third of the book, which is probably the only part of the book that really works, that came out. And I reshuffled it, some of the events and the order of it. And I cut it into much shorter chapters. It was just 1 chapter at first. Now it's like, I don't know, 10 or so. But it basically just came out. It was pretty much like it was.
Cool. So I was going to ask you some questions from the live questions, but in fact, most of it is a discussion about gefilte fish and chopped liver.
I'm up for that.
But no, there are no questions. It's just people coming in saying the stuff in the jar is awful.
Yep.
It has to have Gold's horseradish on it.
These are my
Homemade is delicious. You know, I guess I'm not a true Jew. I do eat matzah year round. You know,
that is weird.
So there's not really. I'm going to go through it just to be sure. Not a lot of questions we missed. It's mostly just everybody chiming in about what they like about chopped liver or gefilte fish or don't like about it.
This is why I prefer writing about food.
Right. Okay, here's one. What role do you think media echo chambers play in solidifying people's sense of who is and is not like them?
Let's go back to the Shav questions.
There were no Shav questions. Maybe borscht. Does the Russian tea room put a hard-boiled egg in their borscht? Or a boiled potato?
There were, it's been a while. I don't think so. No, I mean,
Okay.
Maybe there were pieces of potato, perhaps. I don't remember.
All right.
The whole blaming the media thing is, it's weird. For a long time, I tried to figure out what people meant, and I realized they just mean TV news. There's not that many people watch TV news, but people who watch TV news think it's the whole world because they have it on their TV 24 hours a day. And when people talk about the media, they're never talking about The Economist magazine. They're never talking about, sometimes they're talking about the New York Times, but not really. They're never talking about the BBC News. They mean Fox or CNN or MSNBC. And I think they're not as powerful as people think. I think blaming things on, not that these things shouldn't be dealt with, whether it's Facebook or Russian interference, they're real things and they should be dealt with, but that's not what's driving this whole thing. And I think you're taking your eye off the ball if you believe that this is because of the internet or because of Fox News or because of Newsmax or whatever it is. That this has happened before, these kind of nationalism, populism movements. They're happening in places around the world that don't use a lot of the internet. I don't think the average Indian is spending all their day on, Twitter, and yet this revolution's happening there. So I think people, there's a lot of blame for this that I think is overly simplistic. It's a reaction to a black president, or it's because of Twitter or whatever, or Fox News. I wish people would take a more historical perspective and a more global perspective and see all the places this is happening and has happened and look at those causes instead.
Yeah, you make a good point. It's not a simple answer, but there is, to my thinking, there is no question that social media is definitely an echo chamber, and also too, on occasion, I'll listen to Fox News just to hear, and it does feel like they're reporting a different world than I know.
Totally different. Yeah. But I don't think it's because of Fox News. I think Fox News is actually a trailing indicator of what we'll call them Republicans, what that part of the world believes. I think they're behind, and I think they're very far behind right now. I think Fox News is probably on the liberal side of the hardcore Republicans right now. And I think Fox News is in trouble because they're going to lose those people, because those people believe in QAnon. Fox News, for the most, they almost turned on Tucker Carlson the other day for saying that Biden won. Their viewers are leading them more than they're leading their viewers.
Yeah. So we've actually come up on our hour, which is amazing.
So do you think a brain surgeon that you could run HUD? I mean, this is the general question I have in my book, which is people feel like if they're smart and they have a good soul, they can run things from the gut. And that's what Trump believes, and that bothers me. Right.
Well, the person that Trump had no brain. So, and there you go.
He was a brain surgeon. You have to be okay. I've talked to rocket scientists who said to me that brain surgeons are no brain surgeons. Do you think Ben Carson is inherently smart because he's a brain surgeon?
No.
Really? But you have to be so smart to be a brain surgeon, right?
I can't get into this. I can't get into it.
You just have to have good hands?
There were in my career, I ran across some brain surgeons who were surprisingly not so smart. And it's a combination of things that got them to where they were. So I don't know. I can't really completely explain that phenomena, but it does occur.
Who's the dumbest brain surgeon you know?
Oh, come on. I can't. I could share it with you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Fair enough.
But so listen, the closing comment just has to be from the chat. Maybe Joel needs to write a cookbook.
I would love to.
Okay. Well, if you want a good borscht recipe, call me.
I do not.
Okay. Then
it was so
Joel,
good to see you again. This was so nice of you. I'm so honored that you were willing to do this with your day. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored that you would talk to me. It was great fun, and love to Cassandra and Laszlo. It was great to see him grown up.
I know, it's weird, right?
Yeah, he's going to be driving soon, and then watch out.
Then we'll get him a license plate that says Smesticles.
Right, there you go.
I have those stools for my kids, but thank you. Yeah, all three of them. Thank you, Joel and Alan, for your very interesting, enlightening talk. We greatly appreciate all of you at home who joined us to watch. Our next event is tomorrow evening at 9:30 a.m. when we present the second of our Mitten Morning programs, Ellen Gellerman, author of Book of Hannah, a tragic comedy in 3 trimesters. Remember to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and visit website culturalarts.jccdet.org/bookfair for our full schedule and to find ways to get involved. Stay safe and have a good night.